and when you're getting into business or when you're doing something or presenting something, I now always tell people and my friends, think of your positioning. Who is it that you admire? Who do you want to be like? Or who do you think has some of this and some of that, and you could put together that mix?
Hi, I'm Tracy Lovejoy.
And I'm Shannon Lucas. We are the co-CEOs of Catalyst Constellations, which is dedicated to empowering catalysts to create bold, powerful change in the world.
This is our podcast, Move Fast, Break Shit, Burn Out, where we speak with Catalyst executives about ways to successfully lead transformation in large organizations.
And today we are very excited to have time with Susie Coelho. Susie is a best-selling author, a television personality, a lifestyle expert, and an entrepreneur. As founder and CEO of Susie Coelho Enterprises, a multimedia lifestyle company created in 1997, and was one of the first Indian American actresses to break through in the US entertainment industry. She's won awards for her contributions to the industry, including the prestigious Women of Vision Award, woohoo, in 2007 from the Women in Film and Video organization. Susie began her career as a successful Ford model in New York, so if you're not watching the video, you might want to, and later as an actress in LA. She went on to become a regular contributor on the Today Show, The View, and Oprah, who we love as a total catalyst. Susie, welcome.
Thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Thrilled to have you. All right. Well, we'd love to jump in by having you introduce yourself and hear a little bit about your catalytic journey and maybe sharing a few career highlights that you're proud of to see that catalytic nature throughout your journey.
Well, great. So, hi, Tracy, Shannon, thanks for having me. Gosh, I've been doing this, it seems like for so long. I like to think I'm really young, but I'm really not, because I've had a lot of jobs in my life, starting out in the early days, just working, trying to make money to buy a car, just as a young girl. And because my parents are from India, my dad came to the States to do his PhD at Harvard. That's how we ended up in the States. And although people say I don't look Indian, I pretty much look like my mom, and my mom's looks, well, I don't know. I guess she looks Indian. I mean, how do you look Indian, I guess, unless you're wearing sari?
Good question. Yeah.
But people didn't recognize me as Indian, but yet they knew I was ethnic. So I always kind of had that ethnic stamp from the time I was a little kid, because I had darker skin and I was growing up in a very, sort of white society in Washington, D.C. and in Bethesda, Maryland. And so my early days were really the desire to fit in. Everything was all about, how can I be like everyone else? I didn't want to be different. I wanted to have blonde hair, blue eyes, straight hair, the proper nose. I wanted to be just like everybody else. I wanted to dress like them, be like them. And I think that's the challenges of a lot of young girls these days. Even my daughter, when she was younger, do you get invited to the party? Do you want to be, you want to be like everybody else. So especially if you're different. And it was hard to say that, because you just kind of want to fit in. So as things through my life, I just became a worker bee, because that's what I went to. That's what immigrants do. That's what my family said we had to do if we wanted to make it in America. And of course, we wanted to make it in America here. We were lucky enough to be here. And now, what were we going to do with our lives? So I came from this scholarly background, but I really didn't follow that route. I left college after a year at American University. I felt I was smart enough. I don't know if my parents thought I was or not. They felt confident enough that I had enough skills, work skills, because I'd been working so much and I bought my own car, that I could make it. And I worked at NIH actually as a secretary of the National Heart and Lung Institute, because I learned how to type in school. That was a great skill. That's now really good now that we have computers. But I decided to move to LA to be a model. And then, of course, it was even worse, because now it was all the blonde hair, blue-eyed girls and the Cheryl Teagues and all these fabulous models. And of course, I wanted to be just like them. I wanted to be the first Indian to break through. And of course, my first job, oh my gosh, Air India ad. And I thought, oh, please, no, they're going to typecast me again. I'm going to have the stamp again. So I went through that for most of my early career. I left New York after 2.5 years. I ended up doing Alice Cooper's fan mail to pay the rent, dragging the bag from the post office all the way back to the apartment to open up and, get the little oh, we want to be part of Alice's fan club and send him back a picture. And so as I went through my life, I just sort of kept those roots of hard work and making money. I never borrowed any money from anybody. To this day, I've never borrowed a dime from anyone. And even with my businesses, I've always had to make the money because I've put that on myself. And I might have had a little money in the bank from something else. And I thought, okay, I have that money. I'm going to use that money in order to create this business. Because otherwise you're borrowing, you're stealing, you're whatever, and you don't have a benchmark of what you really can spend and what you should spend. And there's something about necessity level, I call it, the necessity of having to accomplish something or having to make the money. And I feel like I always tell my kids, you know, I'm not going to just give you things. You have to have the necessity, because that's what the driving force is. People say, what's your passion? Well, you have to have passion, but you also have to have necessity. I need to make money. I need to be someone. I need to make my mark. I need to transform something. Whatever that is, you have to have that, and that's the driving force. So anyway, I continued to LA to be an actress, and then I continued to open up businesses. Later, I changed my career to be a television host. I opened up a restaurant with my ex-husband, Sonny Bono, who's now going to be back in the press because Cher's written a book. And so then I opened up a store called A Star Is Born that sold celebrity clothing and collectibles. Then I went back in television. Long story short, I ended up starting after I had my son and had to lay down for 5 months during my pregnancy because he was coming early. And somebody who's, you know, a go-getter, it's pretty tough to lay down. So I decided when he went to school that I was going to go back to business, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I could talk more about that later, but then I started a whole lifestyle company.
I mean, I'm so glad.
Already just thinking about this journey, but it's just continuing.
It is, and you're getting started on a new thing, which is amazing. I would
Crazy.
love
Maybe
you
crazy is the better word.
inspired. I don't know. I hear
Crazy.
a
I
bunch of
like crazy.
Okay, crazy. Yeah, the Catalyst community will probably relate to that.
Well,
I would,
Catalyst community crazy. I think that third word is good.
yes, the crazy Catalyst community.
That's right. No, I like that.
Yeah. You and I got to talk a couple of weeks ago, and I would love for you to just double click on like the how you got into television, because it's such a catalyst story.
Right.
Can you share that part of your journey?
Well, are you talking about the last part of the
The
the show?
HGTV.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was interesting. So after my son was, I think, 3 or 4 or 5 maybe, and he was at school every day, I thought, well, why am I sitting home waiting for him? I gave up my career to lay down, to raise him, to make sure he was doing well, which he was doing terrifically well. And now I need to go back to work. And what is it that I'm going to do? And I think a lot of us have had jobs in the past, whether it's being a mom or whether it's being in business or whether it's helping the community, whatever that job, quote unquote, is, it's still a job. And you kind of look at your life at a certain point and you say, well, what's my next thing? You know, what's my next vision and, or my next plan? The kids are growing up or they're at school. I have a lot of friends, girlfriends now going through that. You know, they might be 60 years old. Some of them are 50 years old. They go, what am I going to do? You know, because now my kids are grown and I'm not running them to camp and I'm not running them to school, and they're trying to find their way. So I was trying to find my way again. And so I thought, I have so many different things that I've done, but none of those are valid now. I can't go back and be a model. I'm too old. The acting industry probably doesn't want me because you're as good as your last movie, and I haven't done anything in a long time. Da 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 da. I'm not going to open up another restaurant or a store. I'm done with retail and brick and mortar. So where do I go with this? And what skills do I have? Now, I felt I had a lot of skills because I'd done a lot of jobs, but I didn't know how those skills were going to translate. So I decided to survey my friends. So I called my very good friends and I said, okay, you're going to think this is really strange, but you know me, I'm just like, sometimes just come up with these things. Could you just tell me what you think I do? And they just burst out laughing. And I said, no, really tell me, what do you think I provide? What do you think I do for a living or have done? What do you think of me as like a talent or like as a product? What is it that is the essence of Susie? All these kinds of questions to try to get almost some brand positioning, but I didn't really know that I was trying to create a brand, a Susie Coelho brand. And I said, why do you invite me to your house? Or why do you ask me over to help you redo your living room? Because I'm not specifically a trained decorator. Why do you always call me to ask me which restaurant to go to, or fashion advice, or this or that? Why? And so it kept coming back as I interviewed my friends, this word style and the stylish way of living and this sort of passion about it and the desire to help others, because I'd go to their houses and I'd start moving around the furniture myself. Oh, you don't need that pillow there. Why don't you dekludge that? Oh, that doesn't need to be there. And I'm very confident about what I do because I just love to dive in and do things like that in other people's houses, in mine as well, but more in other people's houses. So, and they love it. Who wouldn't want somebody to come over? And I wasn't a skilled designer specifically, but I'd had, some pretty good background in style and business and such. So I kept putting it together. And I went to the bookstore to see who else was doing style stuff. And I couldn't find anybody in lifestyle. And I looked around. And the only thing I saw on the end cap was was Martha Stewart's books. And she was a cook at the time. She had not gone public. And she had the end caps. So she was the most prominent person in this lifestyle world. And I was just looking at style. And so I thought, Martha Stewart, and I looked at her and I thought, oh, I'm nothing like her. I don't look like her. There we go again. The blonde hair, blue-eyed Connecticut girl has made it, was probably a model too, and and lives in Connecticut. Of course she's going to make it. And so I thought, and I'm a cook and I had a restaurant, but that's not the world I wanted to go into. Long story short, I kept looking, and then I started to decide, and I now I'm willing to say this, but before I never was willing to say this because it was my own personal positioning. But through this process of research and trying to figure out how I could take those skills, I kept thinking, I'm not really just like Martha, but who am I like? Well, I really wanted to have a talk show my whole life. I wanted to be more like Oprah because I love to inspire people, and I had a good television background already. I was good on camera, and I thought that's what I want to do. I want to have a talk show, but I wanted to have a talk show that had to do with style. And so I sort of put together this Oprah Martha mix in my own positioning mind. And I think that's great. I think, and when you're getting into business or when you're doing something or presenting something, I now always tell people and my friends, think of your positioning. Who is it that you admire? Who do you want to be like? Or who do you think has some of this and some of that, and you could put together that mix? And so for me, and again, I never told this to anybody. I mean, now I think I've told it a few times, but I thought this Oprah Martha mix. And the Oprah Martha was Oprah inspiring others. And Martha was lovely style because she has good taste and really nice style. So, and even though my style was different because I had some ethnic background and some different ways of looking at things and colors and various things, but I thought, okay, maybe I'll be like the West Coast Martha, and nobody has to know that I'm want to inspire like Oprah or have her talk show or a talk show. So that's how I came about starting the lifestyle company. And so I thought, great, I'll just do a business plan. Well, I didn't go to Harvard myself, and then we didn't have AI at the time. So to do a business plan was going to be a major effort. So I thought, well, what areas of business do I want to be in? Oh, television, publishing, endorsements, licensing, and personal appearances. Those are areas of business that I can look at and monetize. Oh, well, where am I going to start? Nobody knows me in publishing. I can't sell a book. I can't do a licensing brand of Susie Coelho products because I'm not Susie Coelho yet in this new incarnation. So where do I start? And I looked at television and it kept popping up. And television usually is the latter thing that people end up doing. They write a book first, they become known, they end up on personal appearances, they build their brand, and maybe they're lucky enough they get a TV show. And I thought, oh, television, I can do that, even if it's not my own show, but I know how to do TV. So I thought, I'll just call an agent. So I started calling big agents that I'd been with before or that I knew in this arena, and I could not get through. I could not get a return call. I couldn't get the big agent to call me back. And I kept pursuing it. And finally, I ended up with a junior agent. And I said, can I take you to lunch in Beverly Hills? And she said, yeah. So I took her to lunch in Beverly Hills. It's a nice restaurant. And I told her what I wanted to do. I told her I'd gone to the bookstore. I told her I was going to be this Oprah Martha mix. Don't tell anybody. And I wanted to get into the lifestyle world and do home and, entertaining and inspire people. And she said, oh yeah, and you could do garden too. And I said, oh yeah, I've landscaped some properties. I'm not a horticulturist or a botanist, but yeah, I could probably do garden. I mean, just add to the list. I go fashion. I love fashion. I used to be a model. She goes, great. So she goes back to the office. She calls me not 2 weeks later, and I'm not kidding how this works, because I had it put out there. I was putting out the vibes big time, creating it in my mind, creating it on paper, writing down, talking to my friends, finding out, and it was started to become real. And it just starts to become real, like a living, breathing thing. Now I'm actually doing something to pursue it. And she calls me and she says, I have an interview for you. I said, oh, that's fast. Great. And she's not even representing me. She said, it just came to my table because it's kind of a small job. And so the agent didn't want to handle it. So it came to her table. And I said, well, what is it? She said, oh, it's on a cable network. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go really backwards now. I used to be on network television. Now I'm going to go back to cable. And cable wasn't happening then. It wasn't like a big thing. There was a few cable networks. So I said, well, what network? She said, HGTV. And I said, HG who? What was that? And I had never even heard of HGTV. It was only in its third year, and we didn't have it in LA where I lived. It hadn't come through there yet. So I was like, okay, it's a gardening show. And she said, yeah. So anyway, I went, it was raining, and they put me on camera. They'd been looking for weeks to replace a host. It was already an on-the-air show, and I got the job. And literally the next week I started shooting. And that opened up the door. And from there I waited till the show got picked up. Then I got a publicist. Then I started to get more press. Then I started to do other shows and show up. Then I got the Today Show. I sent my own letter. I didn't let the publicist do it. It was Jeff Zucker at the time, who was the head of the Today Show. I sent it to him. He passed it to his next person. They called right away and said, send a tape. And just this gregariousness but I have to say, the thing that I think I did well that particular time is I got the timing right. Often I'm ahead of the curve, or I've thought I could do something before I could really do it. And I think, they say timing's everything. Well, it's timing, but you have to know when they're ready for you. And so when you put yourself out there, it's a win. You know that they're going to receive it and say, oh my gosh, I'm so glad she sent it, even if I don't need her right now, or even if I don't need, I can't do that deal. She's great, or she's got the goods, or whatever that is. So I wait till the right time. And when I feel like, okay, when I put that letter in front, and I work hard on the letter, at that time it was snail mail, and I sent my books, but I didn't send a video, because I didn't want to be so pushy, which is kind of foolish, but I had it in my mind that time I didn't want to. And normally I'd send a whole package. So I sent the books, and I just said, look, if you have any need, you're going to a third hour. At that time, they were going to a third hour. If you have needs for a lifestyle expert, please keep me in your files. Here are my books. I'm on HGTV. I could come and do a segment on blah, 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 blah. And it was just kind of that. And then I got a call the next day. Same thing happened with my licensing agent. When I got to the point where I could finally felt I was built enough, big enough brand to sell my brand as licensing deals, the Susie Coelho brand. I then researched online the perfect, what I thought was the perfect licensing agent, and sent them the same kind of package. And then I waited the next day, and I told my staff, this is how cocky sometimes I can be, I can't believe they haven't called yet. Of course, I'm saying it tongue in cheek. I'm not fully serious, but I'm kind of putting it there. And they're laughing, and they go, oh, they'll call. And I said, I'm sure they'll get back, for sure. They'll get back. And then the next day, the senior vice president calls. Or he sends an email and says, can you get on the phone today? And I said, great. And when I got her on the line, I said, I'm so surprised you didn't call yesterday. I was waiting for your call. And she laughed, and I laughed, and it became this great thing. And then I ended up with the Beanstalk Group in New York. And so that's kind of the way it goes. You just kind of feel it. And it's the fun of creation, and the fun and the passion, as you guys know, when you started your business. It's like, oh, I have an idea. Okay, I don't know if it's going to work. Well, it's going to work. Of course it's going to, people need this. And you just barrel through and you find the niche and then you tweak it and there you go.
So I'm so glad I asked the question because it's such an amazing journey. And I mean, I just want to pull on a couple of threads. I love part of why I love that story was what you did with your friends, which I think is such good advice for catalysts who are listening, which is, doing a listening tour of the people who know you in lots of different capacities.
Yeah.
And seeing where the common threads are, where your superpowers are, because we don't always know, especially as catalysts. It's just like, this is the way I operate. But like, then you start to see the value of the things that just feel so intuitive and natural to you. And then from that, you started to be like, and here's the vision. Like, okay, I synthesized all of that and there's a lot of places I could go, but you got down to like 5 things. And then you got down to the one thing, and the power of having the vision. And also what I love too is we talk to catalysts about having a clarity of vision. Often we talk about having a visual representation, but when you say you are Oprah and Martha Stewart on the West Coast,
visual, right?
People get it. Totally. It could not be
clearer. I didn't say it because I was too embarrassed to say it.
Fair.
Now it's fine because I created something, but it doesn't matter. You could just have it in your own world.
In your head. That's
and you
right.
know what? You can put it out there if you feel confident enough. And I was confident enough to have that in my own mind, but not to put it out there because I just wasn't ready to put that out there. They were both at their pinnacle later, so it was hard to, and then other people started in the press, they'd say, oh, she's like a Martha Stewart. In fact, I wish I had it with me, but I have all this press, which is really kind of one of my favorite things of press, is who will be the next Martha. I have like 8 articles with who will be the next Martha. And there are a few people, but of which I'm one. And so again, that's the vision coming to reality. And then when Oprah calls and says, come on, you're like, okay, good,
Check. Yep. Vision
exactly.
Realized.
Yes.
But you have this a beautiful part in your story where like there's this massive aspiration, ambition, passion, all of the things, and the humility to be like, I'm going to take that junior agent out to lunch.
Well, that's a very good point, Shannon. That's a really good point because people think, see, everybody is somebody. I know that sounds trite, but everybody's somebody who has an opinion and who's connected to someone and or who's your public. So I'm never snotty about, if I have to get to the top person, there's a reason I have to get to the top person. But if I can't get to the top person, I'll start with anybody.
Yeah.
I'd walk in there and just stop somebody and say, could you tell me who is the young agent? I would just, you have to just be tenacious, not so pushy that people don't like you.
Yeah.
But if you have a cute personality and you can just sort of make your way through, if that's one of your skills, then that you can do. If you're a good writer, you can write something and try to get a leg up. If you've got contacts, you can use those. I think that one of the things I would say is you have to know what your resources are as a person. And again, this goes back to interviewing your friends. That's kind of your resources.
Yeah.
And it becomes style attributes. You're vivacious, you're this charming, not that I am, but these could be attributes of somebody. You're go-getter, or you're, you inspire people, or you're stylish, or you're this or that, or whatever. And those become brand attributes that then you put together when you're sort of selling your brand, let's say, to a retailer. They want to know, what is the public getting besides, nice pillows and bedding and bath. Like, you're selling yourself, and what is that brand about? What does that represent? So I think looking at your resources, and I did a talk recently. Well, I've done a few talks recently. I used to speak all the time when I was in the lifestyle world to home and garden shows and different women's events and such. But recently I was asked to do a talk, and then I redid it. So I did the talk for a group of women who are very accomplished and didn't need to be inspired, but they wanted to know about my life story, kind of like what we're talking about. And after, a lot of people came up, quite a few of them, the younger ones, said, oh, I'm looking for my next gig. I'm looking for my next thing. I just raised my kids. How do you find something? How do you get that desire to do it again and to reinvent yourself? So I thought, oh, yeah, this is important for them. I'd love to help people do that. And then other people came up and said, I'd love my granddaughter to hear you. I'd love my daughter to hear you. So I put together another event. My girlfriend actually did. And it was supposed to be 20, 25, young girls who were going to come, and ended up being 65 moms and girls. And I gave it again. And at the end of this talk, which was only 4 or 5 months ago, I had a slide on the PowerPoint because I had some video and such to show. And the slide said, the best is yet to come. I don't know why I put that in there. I put it in there. I didn't have the best is yet to come yet. I'm kind of working on another book. I'm kind of working on, on a board. I'm trying to find my own way on my next venture. And I'm telling you, I inspired myself because I said at the end, you're never too old, you're never too young, you're never too this, you're never too that. You can just go for it again. And I walked out of there and I thought, well, I should take my own advice. I want to help people. I want to motivate people. I want to jump back in and give back in a way. It could be a business, but it could be something else. It could be philanthropic. How do I take my skills? Now I know my skills. I'm old enough to know my skills and what I've marketed before. How do I take that and help others now either build their businesses or motivate them? So I started to think about that and met with a friend. And I said, how can we do a motivational thing? And after I talked about it enough, I thought, it just seems like starting from scratch. I think I'm going to go back to my old idea from 16 years ago that I never got done and move the motivational part into that idea. And so
Yes, totally. And that's such a great thread because there's sort of two challenges that you just mentioned that we often experience in our lives as catalyst. You landed on one, which you had mentioned early before, which is when is the timing right?
right,
Because we can be so passionate about our ideas, and especially when it's connected to helping other people or whatever your purpose is,
right.
it's like I can't put that thing down right now. So I'd love to hear about that. But the other thing that you sort of alluded to is like the feedback of you're too much, you're too old, you're too young, you're too aggressive, you're too smiley, especially for
Right,
women
right.
in the business world. So I'd love to hear like how did you successfully, because you're massively successful, how you successfully navigated those two big catalyst challenges?
So the first one about the timing would be that I think you have to be smart enough, but smart enough means you just have to be thinking it through. You have to be thinking that there is a proper way and a proper time. I think sometimes people are maybe overly aggressive and they think they have everything and then you kind of are put off. That's not my style. I wait till I see that there's a need or I find what I can produce that I know I can produce to then fulfill a need. So the timing is that you have to be ready. So let's just take a girlfriend whose kids are grown and she sees me as an inspiration in this talk and she's thinking, well, I haven't done much in my life. Now that's not what I wanted her to come away with. Luckily, she's a good friend, so we got over that really quickly. But people sometimes think just raising kids is not enough. Oh my gosh. If you really talk to business women, they're like, it's so much easier to go to work than to be home raising kids and running around. It's difficult, and it's definitely difficult to do both. So they're all big jobs and you can only do so much. So no matter, I said, are you kidding me? Look at, you've raised kids, you supported your husband. I mean, she was traveling the world with him. He was a big executive. I said, you know what? You've got to look at what you've done and what are your skills? Like, you were with the Queen of England and then you're with somebody else.
It's important to understand where you are in life.
That's right. It's
Yeah,
important to say where you are in life and what you have as resources. And so
yeah,
that's one of the points that I said in my talk, that if your resources can be anything. They can be your skills. They can be, something that you do and that you provide and that you're good at. It can also be, who do you know? That's a resource. If you happen to have parents that are connected to certain people, you happen to have friends that know other people, these are all resources and you need to tap into them. And you can go to your parents' cocktail parties and chat it up with some of these people who actually are the first people to say, I'll help you. My husband was at Yale University, one of the execs running Yale for 9 years. And often we're with a lot of our friends who have teenage kids. They're calling him for advice for
right.
school or for navigating HR type things, in their business. And so he's on the phone a lot of times with our friends, but it started with come over for dinner, and then they'd start to talk. And then our friends would say, oh, Mike, would you mind talking to my daughter? And she could really use some advice. So there are resources there that sometimes people don't tap into, whether you're older or younger. And I think you should be confident enough to use them. It's okay to sit down with somebody and say, look, I'm at a new stage in my life. I really would love to get your advice. You're a great executive, or you're a great leader, you're a great this or that. And I'm thinking about these different things, and how should I be thinking about it? And maybe interview a few people and start to get an idea, and not be, embarrassed to do that. And they'll pull it out of you. Oh, well, what are your skills? Well, what do you want to do? Well, what are you passionate about? Da, 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 da. And then I think the big key is you have to have the courage. Even now with this new business, my husband was first like, why do you need to go back into business? It's not like we need to make our next dime to pay our rent, because luckily we've built our business, our lives to have that and be secure enough like that way. So it's not about money. And I said, honey, it's never about money. I've never started a business. If I was going to really just set out to make money, I wouldn't have done half the businesses that I did, because it's not about making money, even though, yes, it has to translate. But I never set out to say, oh, if I do this thing, it's going to make me a lot of money. But that's okay if that's your goal and that's what you want to do. And usually you find something you're passionate about. So for me, it's always some purpose. It's always some inner purpose that I follow that thread. And when I was young, I didn't know what that purpose was. I just thought I was a dilettante. I just thought I kept shifting from thing to thing, because either I was bored and I wanted to try something new, or I'd already proven it to myself, or I wasn't making it, so I needed to move on. I wasn't quite sure, but I kind of just went from thing to thing to thing. Well, later that became a huge amount of skill sets. I started listing them out. I'm like, wow, I thought I was a dilettante. Now I'm just going to use it as I have that experience.
Amazing. Yeah, a catalyst. I just was on the phone with someone yesterday, and it's like we can be generalists. It's like we might go down a rabbit hole, but then we're so interested in all of the other things going on. And just before I hand it over to Tracy, I wanted to say I love the advice about the intentionality about the phases of life. Like often when I'm coaching or mentoring, like I was a single mom. And so for 8 years, I had a job that I made enough money that allowed me to be a single mom in a way that, my mom's generation just didn't have the flexibility. Right. But then, and a lot of Catalyst executives, like in our Catalyst Leadership Trust, we have all these very senior Catalyst leaders, and they started asking us, like, what does the next phase look like for a Catalyst? Like, do we retire? And all of them were like, I have zero desire to just go play golf or tennis all day.
Exactly.
I might do more of that, but like, that's not going to be the thing that keeps me lit up.
100%. I said to my husband, great, we're in this beautiful environment. I can play tennis every day and I can go to lunch with the girls. I said, that'll last me. I mean, I will go play tennis to get my exercise. And then it's like, okay, now what am I going to do? Well, I have a 2-year-old grandson. So for the last 2 years, I didn't jump into the business, even though I was thinking about it. And I did, this is the other thing. I did what I call a pilot program. And so I think that's important for people too. It's sort of, how do you ease into it, or how do you test it? So when I started the store, A Star Is Worn on Melrose, I just had gone through a divorce with Sonny. I had to make money. And I thought, I'm in television, but I'm, again, you're as good as your last gig. So I had a show, then it went off the air, then I needed to get another show. So I had to make money because I just bought a house, had to pay the mortgage. And so I had this idea of selling celebrities' clothing, really selling my own clothing, which I did. So I did a garage sale. And honestly, I have to say, Cher inspired me, because she had done something similar with just some friends who said, dying to get your clothes. And I remember going over there as well and buying a few things. Her assistant had put it together. And it was kind of fun. It was kind of a girls' gab, and we brought some Cher clothing, and it was great. This was many years ago. And I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to do the same thing. And believe it or not, Cher came over and she helped me tag my clothes in the garage.
Amazing.
Because I said, how do you price the clothing? And she said, oh, like I priced it like this, like that. And luckily I was a big shopper, so I knew what the retail was. And I thought, okay, a little bit less than half. There was no real. There was none of these kinds of, there was maybe a little consignment store down the street. So we priced the clothes. I called only friends and models and the bookers at the agency and all of that. They came, I sold $12,000. literally in a weekend, $12,000 of clothes. You wouldn't even think I had that many clothes. I even pulled out Sonny's clothes. I was selling jackets and Armani jackets and stuff. I thought, this is so much fun. I'm making money. Yay. And so, and these people were so happy to get these pieces. I had racks of it that I'd stored for, so long because we were in we were in public eye. So you couldn't really wear the same thing twice if you're going to be photographed. So you end up with these outfits that you don't know where to wear them to. And they're beautiful and they're incredible. And you can only give away so much. So after I did that, a bunch of my friends called me, happened to be a few celebrities, and they said, we know that you did this thing. We weren't able to come, but we want you to do it for us. I said, I'm not going to run your garage sale, but if you guys all come and we do it in somebody's backyard, so it's bigger, and let's say there's 5 people, then it would be really fun. Then everybody calls their group, and then it will be cross-pollinating, and it will be great. So I did it at another actress's house. And everybody ended up selling a bunch of stuff, and they were all excited. And I thought, bingo, now I've done 2 tests. I wasn't thinking of it as a business. And I thought, I'll open up a store. The next day I went down to Melrose and I signed a lease on a place for, I think it was, I don't know, only a couple grand a month to rent at the time on trendy Melrose when it was really kind of happening. And with $15,000, I opened up a store. And it became a big success. But again, timing's everything. There was no internet. We couldn't scale it. We had big business. I ended up opening up a second store, which was not the right thing to do because it's hard to then decide which things go here, which things go there. And we got worldwide press for free. But how are we going to scale it? People were calling on the landline. I'd get a call from Lucille Ball. And I'd say, oh, yeah, you're Lucy, right? Because I love Lucy. I love Lucy. I grew up watching every Lucy. Hi, Lucille Ball. I'm like, what? Who? You're not Lucy. Oh, come on. I thought it was one of my girlfriends who's an actress playing a prank. She did voiceovers. I thought it was her. She goes, no, really, it's Lucy. And, her voice had gotten deeper by then. She was older. It was just maybe a year before she passed away. She said, no, I have this dress. I wore the Academy Awards. And I said, oh, the black dress? And she said, yeah.
You knew, of course.
Like, oh my gosh, yes, we can come. And I was so embarrassed to go after I had, messed up that I sent my manager, and she was so thrilled. It was a big highlight. And she got the dress, and Lucy came down the steps and gave her the dress. And she said, oh, well, Susie would love to get an autographed photo because we wanted to authenticate all of our collectibles. And so we'd like to get a photo that you signed. So she went upstairs, she came back down, and she said, she gave a picture of her when she was so young, like on the cover of the movie that they've done. And she said, I'm so sorry, I don't have the current one of me in slacks. This is beautiful. There she is, Lucy. Oh my gosh. So she passed away. And then my manager called me and she said, so how much do you want now for the dress? And I said, you know what? I should raise the price, but I just can't. We're going to sell it to the first person who comes in, and that's what they're going to get. And that's going to be our good fortune. And
nice.
That's what we did. And there was a line waiting outside, and I thought, I can't capitalize on her death. And I'm not going to do that. And so those kind of choices sometimes are important because you feel good about yourself, or you feel good about somebody else getting something and, winning. It's okay for others to win too.
It's so nice. And how you brought your assistant along. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Tracy, but I just have to say, like, your sensing ability is so strong because it's that timing thing. Like, sounds like you deeply pay attention to the sensing. And
that's exactly right. Yes, if you want to call it, that's exactly right. You sort of that's a good way to put it, sensing. You do have to sense the moment, the right time, the right, time to approach somebody, even if you're at a cocktail party or something, you just go on your own thing. You have to really sense. It's kind of having EQ,
exactly right.
An EQ. It's like having EQ, good emotional quotient and sensitivity to not just others, but what the universe provides. I know that sounds kind of ethereal, but to really listen to the sensibility and to your own inner voice that says, maybe no, maybe not now. And why? You can question yourself, and then, okay, I'm going to just let that go for a minute. It's okay to let it go. I mean, I used to push. I remember I've done it the other way. And sometimes you push, and it goes nowhere. You back up, you retreat for a moment, and the thing comes to you. because there's kind of this reach and withdraw in the universe, if you push too hard, it goes the other way, it sort of has to be at the right, that's kind of the right time and the right energy flow. And
That cosmic equation is one of the most insane things to try and get your brain around. Like, when are you pushing too hard and when are you not pushing hard enough, Susie? I talk about that with my CEO friend who has her other company, because it's like, you can't just be like, oh, the universe will provide. That's not true.
oh, not
But
true.
also, like, if you push too hard, you're pushing too hard. So it's,
Pushing
thank
too
you for
hard,
sharing
and it's
that.
pushing
Yeah,
things, and it pushes things away.
that's
So
right.
you have to feel that it's like a person. If you think about it as a person, if you're, I mean, I tend to do this often with my husband, pushing too hard, to do something, he goes, back off. I'm like, ah, because you're pushing and they're not receiving, but you don't care. Now you can do that in your family because they know you, but you can't, that's not even the best thing, but you certainly can't do that in business. It'll just go the other way.
Susie, you started by telling us that as you figured out your brand and what you wanted to do, and you realized that it was style and inspiration, I could listen to you all day.
Oh
So,
my
in terms
God.
of the inspiration, it is so clear why your friends see that in you and what you bring. Thank you for sharing that with us. This is for
Tracy.
sure one of my favorite conversations ever.
Oh my gosh. Well, that means so much to me, especially given what I'm wanting to do now and how I want to do it, which, I'll get to a little bit later, but I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me because I really have it inside me. And people, I remember my mom used to say, why do you always sort of pick the wayward girl who needs help to be your friend? I'm like, what do you mean? I can help her,
Yep. And
and maybe it makes
on
me,
that note, if you get one message to leave with our audience, what do you want to share with them related to what you're doing next?
well, that's a big question. Well, I think for the audience, mostly, I would say you have to have courage. And I know that's a big, broad, sort of blanket statement. Like, how do you have courage? You have to just be willing to put yourself out there. Because if you think of all the people, of everything they've done, from all the people you admire, they don't start with anything either. We all started with nothing, we all put together our skills, and you just have to figure out what your skills are or your abilities and your resources and how you can put something together. You're not like everybody else. What you have is different than what I have, than what Shannon has, than what my friend has. They have resources I don't have. And so I think the smart thing to do is to really figure out what you have and really look at that and how you can translate that into your life, into your goals, into your passions, or that maybe that's part of your passion, because people have these great skills and they're fabulous people, but they don't think they have anything
That's
to
right.
translate to work or to a job or to a career. And I think that's where you guys often come in, is to help guide them in that. And for me, I want to inspire people in the style world. And so I've decided to start a company, and it's kind of a tech company, I guess, but I don't think of it as a tech company because I'm using tech in order to provide this service, because now I can reach more people this way. But 16 years ago, I came up with this idea to connect homeowners with people in design because of my girlfriends saying, well, we need somebody to come over. Well, who should we call? Constant barrage of this kind of, wanting style advice. And I thought there's nobody doing that. And then different companies came up with different marketplaces and ways to do it, but never with style the way I saw it. And so 16 years later, during this whole time when I'm trying to motivate others, I got motivated to then start it so that I could then motivate others in a bigger way, but through the area that I know best, which is lifestyle, through the public that I know best, which are the ones I've reached. And so I thought, okay, those are my resources. I could probably be successful because I know this world. Now I have to match it with the technology. And now the technology 16 years later had come to be. And so I was able to look at it and say, wait a minute, I would never take a 16-year-old idea and think that it was current now. But wait a minute, let me rethink this. That idea was great 16 years ago, but I didn't have the tech expertise, nor were there all these platforms and different ways you could modulate things. And there just wasn't that. I met with programmers who were sitting down trying to understand what I was talking about. And that was never going to happen. I would have been hundreds of thousands of dollars later, which I didn't have, to try to put together something that I barely knew what the back end was. What's the back end? Like your booty? I don't know what the back end is. And it's like, what is this talk and all this tech talk? So I thought, I'm not suited for this. I'm never going to make it in this world to create this. So I put it aside. Met my husband, ended up moving to New York, did other things, got my daughter through school. Then I thought, well, wait a minute. Now the tech is caught up. All these people are doing these things.
All the timing.
MVPs. And what's an MVP? I'm like, most valuable player? Oh, I could be the most valuable player. Then I Google it. Oh, it's not most valuable player. Okay. It's minimum viable product. What kind of product are they talking about? I had to start from scratch. Luckily, we have AI. So I started using AI. What is this? What is that? What is this? And I started to learn. And I thought, oh, well, let me just see who could help me with this. And then, of course, I found Adam and how we met. So Shannon's husband, who was doing this.
Thanks, Adam.
Full circle.
Crazy, crazy how this stuff happens. But again, I was putting it out there. I was just putting it out there. And I thought, maybe now is the timing. Let me check it out. And now it's just been flowing.
It's just going. You've got to pay attention to, as Shannon said, the sensing and the flow. Susie, this has been incredible to be getting small insights into your journey, from the hard work and tenacity and clarity of vision, pulling the right people in, having the courage to do so. I know that I'm going to be listening to this again and again. Good luck on those next ventures. As you said, there's no doubt the best is yet to come. So thank you
so much. I appreciate it. Appreciate
both
of you
for being here with us.
Thank you.